best way to spread Christmas cheer is singing loud for all to hear.
Blast this Christmas music is joyful and triumphant. Oh, the humanity.
He's an angry elf.
It's because I'm green, isn't it?
You're the Grinch. You can mess with a lot of things, but you can't mess with kids on Christmas.
I love smiling. Smiling's my favorite.
Maybe Christmas doesn't come from a store. Maybe Christmas might mean a little bit more.
I can tell you what Christmas is all about. Lights, please. And lo, the angel of the Lord came upon them, and the glory of the Lord shone around them, and they were sore afraid. And the angel of the Lord said, "Fear not, I will bring you tidings of great joy that shall be for all people. For unto you is born this day in the city of David a Savior, which is Christ the Lord." That's what Christmas is all about, Charlie Brown. After Jesus was born in Bethlehem and Judea, during the time of King Herod Magi from the east came to Jerusalem and asked, "Where was the one who was born King of the Jews?" We saw a star when it rose, and have come to worship him. They opened the gifts and presented him with gold, frankincense, and myrrh.
Well, Merry Christmas again. We're glad that you're here today. Again, thanks to everyone who is helping with Follow the Star. It's been a really great edition of Follow the Star once again this year, and we thank all of you. Next weekend, by the way, we're not stopping the excitement. Next weekend is Ugly Sweater Sunday. We had it last year, and I gave my sweater away. I bought a new one. So bring your ugly sweaters. There's one I saw online I thought was hilarious. You've seen the one that's got the hole where you can put your phone in it, and you put like a fireplace? So cool. So maybe I'll see that one from you guys. So Ugly Sweaters Sunday. Next Sunday, bring your ugly sweaters. It'll be a lot of fun. All right, so we're back at this series called Make Room at the Movies. And we said that we're doing two things. We're kind of combining this idea of making room during the holiday season at Christmas with the movies. Because usually we as families take time, we make room for movies, for those classic, corny, claymation type movies at Christmas. It's just a tradition. And so we're gonna make room for movies. We're gonna look at those movies themselves, and there usually are some good lessons. Not always, but usually in a Christmas movie, there's some good takeaway lesson. Again, not always. In fact, there's a movie coming out this week, big movie. What is it? Star Wars, right? The Last Jedi comes out this week. A couple years ago, we had Star Wars, 7 came out, and then Rogue One. What's interesting is in these last set of movies, they've moved all the Star Wars movies to December openings. In fact, the next couple of years, you've got Han Solo's movie coming out and Star Wars 9, all in December, like the 18th, 19th time frame. And I was thinking, why is that? I'm not a cynical guy, always. I thought, oh, I get it. Just in time for all those Christmas presents, right? You got Star Wars action figures, Star Wars Legos, Star Wars this, that, and the other. Pretty smart. But I don't know if you knew this, there's actually a Star Wars Christmas special. Anybody seen that? I'm not kidding. Andrew, you found it online, right? A couple people back there. Okay, in 1978, they did a Star Wars Christmas special, and it was awful. I was going to show you, and it had like Carrie Fisher in it, Harrison Ford, the whole, and actually, I was going to show you part of it, but it is that bad. Like, it is really bad. In fact, in the movie, you get to meet Chewbacca's family. His dad's name is, Andrew? Itchy. I'm not kidding. His dad's name is Itchy. His son's name is Lumpy. I'm not kidding. This is a bad movie. But anyway, so again, not all Christmas movies have a good point. This one is an example. But the ones we're looking at do. Last week, we took a look at The Grinch. We looked at The Grinch. And we looked at this idea that the Grinch tried to steal Christmas, but ended up making room for all the Who's in Whoville. He helped them with Christmas. In fact, the classic line is, then the Grinch thought of something he hadn't before. What if Christmas, he thought, doesn't come from a store? What if Christmas, perhaps, means a little bit more? And that's kind of the idea that we had from the Grinch and how he made room. We're going to go from Grinch this week to the Goofball. From Grinch to the Goofball. We're going to look at a long-shot classic movie that came out called Charlie Brown Christmas. Most of you have seen this one, right? It was made in 1965, so it's over 50 years old. You're probably going, hey, how old am I now? Yeah, okay, so it's over 50 years old. It was done quickly. Schultz and them put it together in just a few weeks. They used neighborhood kids to do the voices for the movie. And people thought, because it was so corny, it was so kind of thrown together, that they thought it was going to be a flop. And yet this movie's been around and has shown year after year after year. And in fact, it won an Emmy. This is a really great movie. And it has two central elements that make this movie great. Two classic pieces. One of them, is we saw in the bumper video. It's that speech by Linus, right? Where Linus kind of goes out on stage and he reads the Christmas story from Luke 2. In fact, Schultz was told that they were going to leave this part out. Like they didn't want to include this part in the film. He's like, you leave this out, I'm not doing it. And it becomes the centerpiece of the film. This reading of Christmas 2. It kind of reminds everyone of what the story is all about. And the second really kind of classic image from this film is the tree, right? The little tree that Charlie Brown has, that little kind of like semi-bent over, no needles on it kind of tree. Because what happened was, Lucy was looking for the big fancy tree, right? She sends Charlie Brown and Linus out to get like the fancy schmancy, big, full, beautiful, holds a bunch of ornaments, bunch of lights type tree. And that's not what they do. Instead, they go and they find this little one. And Charlie Brown and Linus have this exchange. Charlie Brown says, the little green one seems to need a home. Linus replies, I don't know, Charlie Brown. Remember what Lucy said? This doesn't seem to fit the modern spirit. And Charlie Brown replies, I don't care. We'll decorate it, and it'll be just right for our play. Besides, I think it needs me. I love that line, because he sees that the tree needs him. So they take the tree back, and what happens? They all make fun of Charlie Brown. Oh, you messed up, Charlie Brown. This is stupid. This is an ugly tree. It won't work. It's terrible. And that's when kind of Linus says his thing. And they remind themselves of what the story is all about. And the tree does need them. And they decorate it, and they get around it, and they sing around it, and it's great. But they also are reminded that they needed the tree to remind them what Christmas is all about. They needed each other. And at the end, they get around the tree, and it looks beautiful now, and all the stuff's on, and the popcorn, and they sing, Hark the Herald Angels Sing, and it's just a great scene. But it takes both those two elements to work. It needs the story of Christmas as told by Linus, and it needs that little tree, because they need to remember each other. Like they need the tree to remind themselves of what is simple. They need the story to remind them that they need the tree, and the tree needs them. It's a simple story in a simple setting in a very simple film. Well, we're going to look at our story today because I think the Nativity itself, the story of Jesus' birth, tracks with a Charlie Brown Christmas. Because you think about it, Jesus shows up on the planet like that little tree. Right? He comes from this nowhere, back of the lot type tree. He comes from a town called Nazareth, right? He's born in Bethlehem, but he grows up in Nazareth. And people say about Nazareth, like, what good can come from Nazareth? Nothing is good in Nazareth. It's a little bitty backwater town. It's a little tree with no limbs on it, right? In the Gospel of John, it says that Jesus came to his own people, and they didn't recognize him because he didn't meet their expectations of what a modern tree looks like. In Luke 4, later on in his life, people see Jesus and they say, he's nobody special. Like, isn't his father that carpenter, that blue-collar worker down the street kind of guy? In Matthew 13, they say, oh, he's no one special. We know his mom. She's over there. We know his brothers and sisters. They're over there. We know this guy. This is no one special. And he becomes like that little nobody kind of tree that Charlie Brown finds in the back of the lot because he doesn't meet their expectations. Now, by the way, just to be fair, they had their reasons for their expectations of what Jesus would be like, that modern tree they were looking for from God. Because they had been oppressed, if you remember, they had been oppressed for generations as a people. They had been oppressed by the Persians, and then it was the Greeks, and then it was the Syrians, and then it was the Romans, and they're paying taxes, and they've got no land, and they've got no government. They're just an oppressed people. They're looking for God to do something big, to like really show up on the earth and do something huge. In Isaiah 64, we kind of hear this hope. It says there, if only you, O God, would tear open the heavens and come down, so that at your presence the mountains would quake. Right? They're like wanting God to just rip open the heavens and show up and do something awesome and huge that everybody can see, that it just dominates. That's what and I can see why they'd want that. I'm sure we've wanted God to do that in our lives from time to time, just to show up in a big, powerful way and do something awesome. At the same time, though, and again, I think we do it too, I do it too, it's kind of lazy in this approach. Because it's kind of like you're going to sit back and wait until it's unmistakable that God's going to show up. It's the big, fancy tree that everyone notices it is what it is. They want to see that. We want to see that. But in that sense, you're kind of just sitting back and waiting for God to do something. Instead of watching, being expectant, hopeful, involved, active in watching for God to show up. There's a difference between watching and waiting, isn't there? Right? Between watching for something and waiting for something. If you don't know the difference, dads, like 35, 45 years old, they wait for Christmas. Right? Because what happens at Christmas time? Right? You see a present under the tree, the only question is what color is the tie? Right? What kind of sweater is it? Is the chapstick wrapped? You know, that kind of stuff, right? So you kind of wait for Christmas. Now, put a package under a tree for a 5-year-old. What do? They're watching it. Like it's going to explode, right? They're like kind of looking at it, right? It's all shiny. They might kick it to see if it rattles, push it, maybe even tear at the edges, because you go see if it says like Hasbro or something on it, looking to see. Anybody do that when you were a kid, John? John's like, yeah, man, I did that. I do that now. But you get the idea that you kind of want to see what's in that package, right? That's watching. We want to be a watching kind of people when it comes to waiting for God. And in fact, there's one other gift that's even better than both those two. The gift you don't expect. You know what the best gifts are? The ones where someone gives you a gift that you didn't expect to get, but man, you needed. And this person, whoever they are, paid such close attention to your life and what you need, they got it for you, and you didn't expect it. And it shows just how much they cared about you. Jesus is that gift for us, right? We didn't know what we needed, and God sent us exactly what we needed at the right time for us because he loves us and cares about us that much, and he pays attention to us. That's the story of Christmas. It's super simple. It's a simple story with a simple family in a simple place. That's how it starts. So we're going to dive in just briefly into Luke chapter 2, to Linus's little speech, and look at that story just for us, again, as we sit here in this place today. Luke chapter 2. It says, in those days, a decree went out from Emperor Augustus that all the world should be registered. This is the first registration and was taken while Quirinius was governor of Syria. Now, he starts off with a little historical backdrop, right? Just a little historical stuff of what's going on in the world. So this is the emperor, right? Quirinius is the governor, and they have a tax. Now, a lot of people will debate, you'll see this like especially on news shows, well, was there really a tax during this period? And what Roman records can say there was a tax during this period? Here's the bottom line, folks. In the United States, what day is tax day? April 15th. Everyone knows that. right? If I told you that taxes are collected on June 20th, you'd be like, no, it's not. You're crazy. It's not true, right? Because you know April 15th. When this was written, everyone knew there were taxes taking place. Right? This was not done in a corner. The emperor himself says everyone's going to get taxed. Do you think they forgot that in 5-10 years? No. So when they wrote this was part of history. This is part of what's going on. And what Luke does is starts off by placing the story of Jesus in history. Like, this is when it happened. This is what was going on. It's not just some kind of made-up story. This was happening. And a tax was being taken place. And you all remember that tax, because you don't forget your taxes. Then it goes on. All went to their own towns to be registered. Joseph also went from the town of Nazareth in Galilee, in Judea, to the city of David called Bethlehem, because he was descended from the house and family of David. Now that was expected, right? The people were hoping for a Messiah, a Savior, who would come from David's line. Because God had promised David he'd have a king on his throne forever. So they're waiting for that. They're waiting for David to have some new king on the throne. So that was expected. So you got historical background and expectations. Verse 5. He went to be registered with Mary, to whom he was engaged, and he was expecting a child. While they were there, the time came for her to deliver her child. And she gave birth to her firstborn son, wrapped him in bands of cloth, and laid him in a manger, because there is no place for them in the inn. Now, there are a couple of ways to picture this scene in our heads, okay? Last week we talked about a cave. Well, most of the time what we think about is this, right? This kind of manger, nativity-looking thing like this, right? We think of this, we think of the manger. It's not this, okay? One way of seeing it is in a cave. We talked about this last week, where probably in a field somewhere, there's a cave. In the cave is a hollowed-out piece of stone where the manger was, and they kept the animals for the night, something like that. The other way of looking at this story is that a lot of people in poor Palestinian homes had multiple rooms in their house. So they had like one room in the house where they'd all live. So everybody's in the same room. Kids, parents, everyone. That's where the Xbox is. They're all in one room, okay? They might have a guest room. Maybe. Maybe the room's on top or close, but there's one room for guests. That was the inn. The Greek word for inn here in the story means room. It's the same room or same word used for the upper room, the upper inn. So usually people would have their room, right, and a guest room, and that was for travelers and visitors and stuff like that. There's one other room in the house, and it was the stable. It was attached to the house. It was part of the house. So the animals would be in the house with the family for two reasons. Number one, protection for the animals, so they wouldn't get stolen. And number two, warmth. Animals provided warmth for the household. So it'd be like right to your main room, then there's like a manger with the food, and then maybe like a step down would be the stable or the animal's room, so they can slop stuff out of the back of the room if they needed to, from the stuff the animals do, But it was right there in the whole complex. So when Mary and Joseph can't find a place in the guest room, they're given what? A place in that stable room. And so you think of the manger then, not as something like that, but kind of like your dog bowl at home. Okay, hang with me here. How many have dogs at home? Okay, so it's so funny with dogs. Dogs crack me up, right? You go get their food out and they hear that food coming, right? And they're like, oh, food. It's like, dude, it's the same food you had this morning. Your whole life you've had that exact same kibble. Doesn't taste any different than it, but they're like acting like a steak, like that somehow it's gonna be new and different, exciting, right? And before you put it down, they're trying to get to the food. You put it down, they're like, get their face in there, and there's like kibble shavings going everywhere, and there's slobber everywhere, and they're just eating this food up, right? Well, that's the manger. So God comes to earth. He shows up after all this time, and them waiting for God to tear open the heavens. He shows up, and they put him in a dog bowl. That's kind of what's going on in the story. Because the manger's like right there in the house. And that's what's going on here. That God shows up in this very, very simple way. And then what happens? Well, some shepherds come to visit. Now, no offense to our shepherds here at Follow the Star. They're great folks. But in the first century, shepherds were like the bottom of society, the lowest rung. They were the outcasts. They were the liars, the cheats, the nobodies, the people you didn't want around were the shepherds. And who does God invite to see his kid being born? Those guys. Out in the fields, taking care of the flocks at night, doing their own thing. And God sends, it says, a host of angels. What's a host of angels? It's an army. There's this huge army to come. Exciting, big, shows up to the shepherds. And what's the first thing that the angel general says? Don't be afraid. Why? Because there's a huge army of angels that just showed up. He says, I got some good news for you. And notice that the army doesn't show up to the governor, doesn't show up to the emperor and say, hey, you want to count us? Doesn't do that. He shows up to a bunch of shepherds. And he says, I got something to show you. You're going to find a baby there in a manger, in a house like yours. Verse 10, I am bringing you good news of great joy to all people. To you is born this day in the city of David a Savior, who is the Messiah, the Lord. And this will be a sign for you. You will find a child wrapped in bands of cloth and lying in a manger, in a house probably like yours. Not a palace, not an emperor's area, in a house like yours. It was simple. God shows up to be with us, to simply be with us in the simplest of circumstances. And then there's a line that often gets overlooked in the story. Verse 19. Mary takes all this stuff in and says, but Mary treasured all these words and pondered them in her heart. And usually I think of this line and think, oh, she's like, oh, this is just great. Get the family together for Christmas. The fire's roaring. Just the lights on the tree are perfect. It's just nice. But I read these words and I hear something kind of different. Because when you think about it, this was not easy for Mary, was it? I mean, she's sitting there one day, doing her thing in Nazareth, and all of a sudden here comes an angel. Says, hey, you're going to be the mother of God. Say what again? Yeah, you're going to have God's son. Oh, how's that going to work? What's it going to be like? I mean, she doesn't do any of that. What she says is, as God wants. In fact, she has this whole little speech she gives in Luke where she praises God for rescuing his people and that she can be a part of it, and she's excited to be part of what God's going to do. She's faithful. But then, what's going to happen? She has to tell her fiancé. Is he going to believe her? Hey, I'm pregnant. It's not yours. God did this. What are her family going to say? What are the folks in town going to say? How are they going to look at her? And then, after all that, she has to leave when she's like super pregnant and walk 80 miles to another city for a tax. And then when she gets there, there's no one to help her. There's no place to stay but a stable. I mean, you got to think she's going, wait a minute, did I miss something here? Like, God, can't you help me out a little bit? You gave me this mission. You gave me this job. A little help would be nice. Like a bed would be nice. But we don't see that. Instead, when the shepherds show up, it's almost like confirmation. Like, she's like, okay, God's with me in this. God's with me in this. And how much do you think that carried her forward in her life? She has a lot of stuff coming up, too. She's going to see her son crucified. And I wonder if this moment helps carry her forward through those moments as well. It's a simple story. And she ponders it and hangs on to it. So for us, we're sitting here now, we're in the middle of the season, and I'm sure we're pretty busy. I know we're busy. And yet we get this very simple story of God entering the world in a very simple way. So how can we make our Christmas a little bit simpler? Because there's a lot of stuff coming up. We got preparations to do, packages to wrap, all that kind of stuff. In fact, in 1998, there's a British researcher named David Lewis who did a study about Christmas time in men. And he found out that male stress levels skyrocket when faced with crowded stores, choosing gifts, and standing in checkout lines. And this is a quote. In some cases, when we looked at heart rate and blood pressure, this is something you'd expect to see in fighter pilots going into combat. Stress, right? Stress. So I have a couple things that I want to just pass on to you. Again, not that I'm an expert in this. I'm probably struggling with them just as much as you are. But some things that we can do to kind of prune our Christmas trees, to make it look more like Charlie Brown's tree a little bit, to kind of simplify a little bit, to help make room in our lives for Christmas this year, like Charlie Brown and his crew did. So first is this, and the all are going to be an acronym for the word tree. Get it? Tree. So you see a tree, you think tree. The first letter is take time. Again, I'm probably the worst person to talk to you about this, but take time to slow down. Because there's a lot of things you can't do if you're in a hurry. You can't share a nice meal with your family in a hurry. You can't. You can't love your kids in a hurry. You can't love your wife or your husband in a hurry. You can't pray in a hurry. So take time to slow down and simplify. Dallas Willard, a theologian from Texas, said that modern people like us need to ruthlessly eliminate hurry from your life. Ruthlessly eliminate hurry from your life. Because if you don't take time, it just snowballs and gets worse and worse and worse and worse. So first thing is take time. Second, retreat. Not like run away, but there's always things coming up. Always things in front of you. So retreat to take time to remember this story, to listen to God. This is his season, right? Linus sitting there reading the story is the highlight. Take time with your family to read that story, to talk about that story, to spend time with God in your life. God came in a very simple way to do one thing, to be with us. Take time to be with him in this. So take time, retreat. Third thing is erase. Erase. You ever take a test when you're in school and the teacher says you can get one index card of notes? Anybody have that happen to you? Yeah, you've seen that, right? What do you do with that index card? You're like writing all over it, right on the edge. You're writing stuff. You're writing Jake or Luke had one the other day. I was like, how do you read that? Like, there's so much stuff on it. Well, our calendars, our lives look like that note card. We're like, oh, there's a space. I can fit something right in there. You know, what we need is white space, margin for stuff. Because look, stuff's going to come up in your life. It's going to take over. If you don't have margin for that, you're going to be swamped. So erase some of the stuff in the margins so you make space for those things. Space for God, space for the unexpected. Make space for God to do something new. Now you're like, well, that sounds great, Frank. How am I going to do that? Well, I'm going to give you a piece of advice, and don't get mad at me. I'm not trying to meddle, but here's the thing. I've done this one in the last couple weeks, and it's really helped. Okay, so this is some advice from just me. This is this. Screen your screens. Screen your screens. What that means is this. How many screens do you have right now you can think of? iPhone, or your phone, your tablet, your computer, your laptop, your work computer, your TVs, right? Your Xbox, your PlayStation. I mean, think of how many screens you're going to put your face in front of today. It's a lot of screens. Our normal screen time, someone's phone just went off. That's awesome. Thank you for that. Just timing's perfect. But the idea is we have all these screens, right? That we're like always like this. Normal is too much. If you're going to FaceTime somebody, look at their face, the real one. So I'm telling you, get off of some of that stuff. Take some time to get away. There's a lot of time you spend scrolling through Facebook and Instagram and Snapchat. A lot of time. Take some of that time away. Screen your screens. In fact, I thought of this the other night. I was like, what would it be like? You know, we fast sometimes, you know. God tells us to fast, go without food for 24 hours. Could you go without any screen for 24 hours, you think? How many of you got the shakes? Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I thought, so afraid Snapchatting. Oh, good idea. Not, someone's Snapchatting right now. But the idea is that, could you do it? Could you go without a screen for 24 hours? Or does that sound just crazy? Like, that's just insane, Frank. Like, food, yes. Screen, no. But I want you to think about that. How much time can you get away from that screen and do stuff like, I don't know, play with your kids outside, build a puzzle, maybe play a game that has board and little pieces on it, go for a hike, make a memory. But make space by simply taking out some of the stuff that's got a screen on it. And the last E is this: enjoy. I don't want these to be a stressful thing. Look, you think, well, if I do this, I'm going to miss out on some things. No, you're not. If you're you're so busy and you're missing out on other things. Like, take time, retreat, erase, so that you don't miss out on the things that matter the most. Simplify. And it just simply starts by being simple with things in your life. I want to leave you with this. I read this not too long ago, but Jason Sorosky wrote an article about A Charlie Brown Christmas. And he noticed something that I've never really seen, but it's pretty profound. In the movie, when Linus is going around, like, he's always got that blanket with him, never lets go of it, right? Everyone tries to get him to let go of it. He won't let go of his security blanket. He's got it everywhere he goes. Except one time. When he's reading that little bit from Luke 2, the story of Christmas, he gets to the line, do not be afraid, for see, I am bringing you good news of great joy for all people. When he reads that part, do not be afraid, guess what he does? Drops his blanket. Right? There's a lot of stuff we're holding on to. A ton of stuff we're holding on to. Sometimes we need to take a page out of Linus's playbook. And simply, when you hear those words, don't be afraid. So I'm bringing you some great news. Let go. Let go of that stuff you're hanging on to. You're not going to miss anything. In fact, you're going to gain a lot of great things by simply being simple this Christmas. Let's pray together.